Going back to, well, the torrent of Truth Social posts that were out on Friday, first focused on Apple, but then spreading their way, it would feel, from Trump that all foreign-made smartphones would potentially be looking at a 25% tariff. Does Apple in some way end up having an edge in that?
The phone is still the most valued device that consumers are carrying. And so hitting on smartphones when initially Trump had said that they were going to be exempt is going to be, hard for everybody. If you're looking at the US market, Samsung and Apple are dominating the market. And so having tariffs applied to Samsung as well, who will have limited availability to make devices here in the US, is going to be hard. For Apple, it's all about juggling the short-term and the longer-term prospect, trying to balance not upsetting the president further, but at the same time not upsetting China either, because it's a big market for them as well.
And India, where they've been shifting manufacturing. Carolina, what does Tim Cook do to satisfy all players right now?
I think buying time is probably his best option. And so making whatever promise he can make of investing in the US. Obviously, if you're thinking about repositioning the production here in the US, we're talking way further than the term that Trump is going to be serving. And so buying time for the next 2 to 3 years might be all that is needed for now.
The way that Tim Cook put it in 2017, I think it was on stage with Fortune magazine, is that in China, you could fill a football stadium with specialist tooling engineers. And in America, you couldn't fill a meeting room, with that same level of skill set. You know all about vertical integration and how the iPhone is assembled and all the different hands that touch one handset. Just try and help our audience understand what it would mean, not to move an iPhone factory to America, but everything else that comes with it.
That is what is impossible to do. I mean, moving the supply chain and then full production here is really impossible unless you're willing to invest, and not just from an Apple perspective, but from a government perspective, billions of dollars in replicating this and investing 10 plus years to do so. I think what you can aspire to do is, an assembled in America, the same way as you have designed in Cupertino on the back of a device. That is the short-term hope. Everything else is really more a fairy tale.
Apple shares fell last week when a headline crossed the Bloomberg terminal that OpenAI was buying Johnny Ive's hardware startup IO for $6.5 billion to make a suite of devices. Your reaction, please, Carolina Milanesi.
That is definitely pressure that right now Apple could do without. They have Apple Vision Pro, very successful in enterprise from an interest perspective, not necessarily a volume perspective, but hasn't really hit consumers for a range of things from the price point to the ecosystem. So hearing, somebody that has worked for Apple so closely and maybe didn't leave on best terms, coming with OpenAI, so you're bringing together the AI sore point for Apple right now with Apple Intelligence, plus a competition from a glass or some kind of XR, AR play. Definitely not a good moment for Apple.
Not a good moment, but only 4 sell ratings on the stock. It's still very close to a $3 trillion company. Can they swiftly turn things around? Can they regalvanize growth here, Carolina?
I do think that we are going to have some of the answer in a couple of weeks at WWDC when we're going to see possibly, like Mark Gurman was reporting, a redesign from an OS perspective, both for iPhone, Watch and Mac, but also hearing, hopefully, some improvement on or some development on the Apple Intelligence part. I think ultimately Apple is still, from a vendor perspective, from a consumer point of view, the one that has the strongest ecosystem and that can tie in consumers, both from a services perspective and hardware. And I think that the point that is getting people scratching their heads right now is how long it's been taking from an Apple intelligence perspective. But I still believe that ultimately they have all the pieces that can come together to really continue to develop their ecosystem in a strong way and please their customers.